If you like a bunch of people being wrong in public, boy, have we got the podcast for you. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner, and welcome to Season 9 of the ArsenalVision Podcast. We've got a lot of changes around here, let me tell you. So, first things first, a totally new cast for this season. No, I'm kidding. We've got a totally new... No, I'm kidding. We don't have that either. So the new music, you've just heard it, and we actually went to lengths to set up an email address for your complaints about the new music. Paul, what's your email? Just kidding. Can you imagine? It'd be pretty funny. No, you can send complaints to that guy Steve on Facebook. Send him complaints. He's the one. So that's here. But if you don't like that music, you can go to Patreon and listen there, and you get all the music from last season because I was too lazy to update that. Thanks to Paul Hepker for the music this season. We will have Know Your Enemy on Patreon this season. We will have power rankings this season. We will have scouting videos. We will have rewatches. We will have instant reaction. We will have 3 big questions. We will have the solo pods, and we will have one club. We will have SCAC. All of that is on Patreon plus the Discord. We'd love to have you there, but if you cannot or shall not do that, we are thrilled to have you here. Love you for being with us for another season. Cannot wait for the football to start in earnest, and it means something beginning on Saturday, except Paul would tell you that's actually the start of the season. That doesn't matter. Preseason was the real season, and that's ending, and now he's going to miss it for another 10 months or 11 months. But that's okay. We've got a lot to do today, because what we're doing today, if it's your first time doing this with us, is our season prediction pod. Now, over on the Patreon, we have a form you can fill out to do these along with us. If you're saying, why just on Patreon? Because just from a numbers standpoint, trying to crunch everything, a little bit impractical. So that is what it is. But we will publish on our website. As you're listening to this, you can go to the website and go to the predictions page, see prior season predictions, and see these predictions. And we can follow them along during the season and laugh, throw our head back, and laugh at how inaccurate they are. But I should mention that last season they were fairly accurate. We'll cover that in a moment. We're getting into it now. And here to get into it with me is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillmanator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there. Now also on Threads, by the way, at Tim Stillman84.
There we go. We are all on Threads now as well. If you're over there, some of us are on Blue Sky. Some of us are still on Mastodon. Some of us are still on Horsecat. Some of us are over on Tree Farm. Some of us are still using letters that you can mail to our P.O. box. There's just so many ways we can all be in touch, and all of them are a good place to abuse us about the new music. Here with me now is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PazManPants. Hello, Paz.
You can follow me on Threads with my now 3 followers.
3? That's 3 more than your threads are worth, but that's okay. We're glad that those people are there. And here with me now is Clive. Find him on Twitter, ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. I think what I'm going to do, actually, guys, honestly, is probably drop you can find him on Twitter. Like, everybody knows where to find us on Twitter at this point, and also everybody's sort of scattering to the wind in terms of social media, so we might drop that. Also, maybe we're just the ArsenalVision Podcast. If you come out every single day, are you a post-match podcast? You're just sort of a podcast. So we are a podcast, and a podcast about to make some really terrible predictions. I will say that right now, as things go, the Eddie and Kedia landing spots are drying up. We're getting so close to Mikel Merino that our atoms are touching. But like at this point, there is no news. So this is a perfect day to do it, because as we sit here recording, there really is no news to report. And that means we are clear for takeoff with our predictions. We will do team predictions, some individual player predictions, some top 4 predictions and things like that. So there's a lot of good stuff to get to. And let's get to it. So the very first category, of course, is final position. This is the big one, and it is the one that we're going to start with. And I will go to you first, Tim. What is the final position in the table for Arsenal Football Club in the 2024-2025 season?
I think it's fair to say we've paid our dues time after time. And I'm going to say it. We are, brackets, going to be, close bracket, the champions. I think we're going to win the league.
He thinks we're going to win the league. I think that is a really nice prediction. I have to say, there's an article, it was on ESPN Plus, so it was paywalled. Ryan O'Hanlon wrote it, talking about reasons City might not be the team to win the league this season. And there were some interesting points there. I just want to mention one data point he put in there, guys. I think this is really interesting. Everybody knows about XG, but they've actually found that a more predictive stat is a 70% XG, 30% goals weighted measurement. Okay. So it takes actual goals, like, what you actually kicked into the net, 30%, and XG 70%. And that has proven to be a bit more predictive. Last season, Arsenal finished above City in that. It is the first time in any of Pep's seasons at City, any of them, that he has not finished top in that stat.
So even we won the league last season.
We won the league last season, exactly. So we're a trophy, as they say, the kids say on social media. But I think that is indicative of just how good we are and just how ready we are to take them down. Clive, what position do you have us finishing in?
Mate, you don't need to ask me that. This is me on an Arsenal podcast. Yes, we're winning the league this time for sure.
Double first place. We're going to finish first and second, according to Clive.
Let's talk multiple trophies, but that's another podcast probably. But let's go.
Can I ask you a question then? Do you have us finishing first because we will accrue the most points in a true competition, or do you have us finishing first because you believe that this legal battle may come to a conclusion before all is said and done this season?
It may do. But it doesn't matter because Man City will just appeal it, right? So nothing will be decided in 1 year. So just for, this is going to be an ongoing process, shall we say? And it could result in anything, couldn't it? It could result in other clubs have been relegated, suing Man City. It could be anything. It's hardly worth speculating and holding on. Just focus on the next games we have, and that's the most important thing.
Yep. Paul, do you have us finishing fourth or fifth?
First. Mm-hmm. We're lawyered up. We're ready to go. We'll win it in court. And if we can't win it there, we'll win it on the football pitch.
Yeah, the worst place to win it, but we might win it there nonetheless. I do want to remind everybody that last season, Paul picked us to finish second. Tim picked us to finish second. Clive and I picked us to finish first. But we were right around it, weren't we? I had 88 points. Paul had 88 points. Clive had 90 points. Tim had 86 points. We really surrounded the mark. Our real difference was just whether we thought that point total would be enough for first or second. Scott had us on 81 points. So, you got to be more optimistic than that, Scott. And I will tell you, looking at the spreadsheet, which you will be able to look at later, he has been more optimistic this season. We had goals scored. I had us on 90, Tim 88, Clive 90, Paul 92, Scott 86. So again, we surrounded it. Goals allowed 36, 38, 38, 37, 37. So Arsenal actually kind of blew us out of the water on that one. But, just a really interesting look back on, how we did with that. And so now we have the chance to try to get close to that again. And I will start with you here, Tim. Point total for this season. Not including deductions for PSR violation.
Of course. I'm going to say 87. So I'm going to say we're going to get fewer points, but it's going to be enough to win the league.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the question, right? It would be so funny for all the people who have talked about the ways we didn't do enough, if we won the league this season with fewer points than last season. Just a reminder that the Premier League isn't just about what you do, it's about what others do as well. Clive, what do you have as the point total?
I like Tim's logic, and it has passed my mind this morning on the walk, but I just fancy around 90 for no scientific reason. 90. I just want to be that club that's improved its point total for the first time for 5 years. I want to be that club. So 90 points does it.
Okay. It's aspirational. You don't have to have a reason. You just have to have an aspiration. It's aspirational. He's got us with 90 points. Paul, because you want to be the optimist on the pod, I imagine you're going to go above 90.
I am. I don't want to be the optimist on the pod. I don't know how I got that label along the way. It's not true. I'm going with 92 points. I think we're going to push on in terms of results. I think we can field 7 players who have an average height of 6'2" in the games where it's not quite flowing or it's raining, it's soggy, the legs are tired. I think we'll get Mikel Merino over the line, and I think we are going to be. If you thought that photo of us looking intimidating in the tunnel with who was it, Raya, Saliba, Gabriel was scary. Will we line up 7 of those fuckers in a row and they all look across at the other guys? We're going to win these games in the tunnel, Elliot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way to do it. Spares us all the 90 minutes, gives us something to do in our day. Clive can enjoy the free beer and club level without having to deal with the fact that he has to actually sit in his seat and watch football. So all good things there. By the way, I'm surprised none of us have docked points on the news that the Ben White law has come into play. I don't know if you saw this, but PGMOL is now not going to allow players to exist in the box. I guess it's what can't push, can't hold. Clive, the Ben White rule. It seems that if Arsenal do a thing, it is critical that we cut that thing out. So last summer there was managers have to stay in this play, have to do this thing, and that was all designed because Mikel Arteta annoyed some people. And now this summer it's you can't touch people in the box because Ben White once upon a time touched the glove of a goalkeeper. You would think the PGMOL might be invested in not holding back people from competing with Manchester City, but maybe there's, some manila envelopes full of stuff passing around. I don't know. What's going on with the Ben White rule?
Well, you've always, as always, answered the question. I think what I'll do to you add on top of that is, let's be honest, right? Referees don't know what they're looking at in the box. But what they do know is that Arsenal scored 1 million goals from set pieces, and we are the primary team to look at. So, like last season, we were the example with referees, and we may giggle and laugh, but a last-minute goal at Luton cost us having Mikel Arteta on the sideline at Aston Villa, and we know what happened in that game. So it's not a laugh. This stuff really does matter. And so come the start of the season, we're going to be the first ones to be pulled up on this. Because apart from maybe Liverpool this pre-season, I've not seen another team set pieces analysed as much as ours. And so, yeah, this is a giggle, Elliot, but it's not a giggle. Scott sent me something the other day. 13 games, our first goal came from a set piece. 13 games out of 38, we controlled a game state because of a set piece. So this is really important. I don't know. These referees ain't got a clue what they're looking at. Hence why teams are now hiring specialist set piece coaches. Right?
Yep.
So to just come out with that edict, that's bothering me. So let's watch this space, shall we?
Paul, I'll give you 30 seconds on it, and then we got to get back to the spreadsheet, which is why people are here.
Yeah, a little known thing about those pickpockets and tricksters who showed up to that dinner with Mikel Arteta. Ben White then went and took all of the phones and wallets off the pickpockets when they weren't looking, and ended up with all of them at the end of it. So we're going to be fine, guys. He's got tricks they don't even know about yet.
I thought you were going to say the pickpockets were actually all PGMOL cover agents. Okay, let's get to goals scored. And this is a tough one. So once again, let's remind everybody what happened in goals scored last season. Last season, Arsenal scored 91, conceded 29, so plus 62 goal difference, exact same as Manchester City. Scored 91, conceded 29. Paul, how many do you have us scoring this season?
92.
Okay, that's a lot of goals.
I believe if you say something stoutly, you don't really need to explain it. 92 goals.
I love it. Tim, how many goals for Arsenal this season?
I'm going to say 89.
Because
we're going to win the league, and numbers like 89, 91, 98, years we won the league, like all my metrics are going to be based on that.
I like it.
Tim has to explain that one because he said it kind of meekly, therefore he has to explain it.
You got to say it with your chest, like Paul did. All right, Clive, say it with your chest.
Just say it stoutly.
How many goals?
90. I'm just keeping numbers the same, right? 90 goals, 90 points, rather than 89 and 91. So there you go.
Got a Control-C, Control-V job going on over here, which, by the way, you can also get in the red light district. And never mind. So
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means. Goals scored, I have us for 89. And I look at it this way, right? I think our attack can be and will be better this season. I really believe that. But we had a weird season last season where it didn't really fire first half of the season, and then it ridiculously overfired second half. We once again exceeded our expected goals by an immense distance. But if some of those 5-0s and 6-0s and 4-1s and 5-1s were 3-1s and 3-0s and 2-0s, which, they could have been, you don't finish all your chances, then suddenly we wind up on 85 or 86 goals last season. And it reflects more of what our season was, which was really half of an outstanding attacking season and half of a more modest attacking season. I expect that we will attack better this season across the whole season. Kai is now here embedded in. Jesus is back and firing. Our huge new signings are going to contribute, of course. But I do think that there will be more attacking flair and effectiveness. But I think both in terms of XG over performance and just some of those lopsided 5s and 6s, it may mean that we wind up scoring fewer. So I've gone for 89 goals as well, leaning into the numerology along with Tim. Goals allowed, I find this one really difficult because I think we're set up to be an excellent defensive unit again. I've gone for 27. That's just sort of for no particular reason. We conceded 29 last season, but slightly underperformed XG. And I think David Raya started the season quite unevenly last season as he was competing with Ramsdale for a job, sort of. Now he is the guy. We have more options at left back than any club in history. I think we have players coming into their prime. Declan Rice is obviously now in and sorted. Again, all our huge new signings are going to contribute. So I have us for 27 goals allowed, a similar defensive stoutness to us this season. Tim, what do you have for goals allowed?
I've gone for 26. Actually, I think we conceded more than our expected goals against last season, right? And as all
just barely, but yep.
Yeah, as all true mathematicians know, the law of averages is a real thing. And it conforms very neatly to 38 football matches. So I think we're in for, either a more reflective or maybe we slightly. Do you over or under? Do you want to over or underperform expected goals against? I'm not really sure.
Overperform it by conceding fewer than you're expecting.
Yeah. So I think we'll be in that kind of mid-20s area.
Yeah, the law of averages tells you that if you've been losing a lot lately, just keep doing what you're doing. It's bound to work out for you eventually. Exactly. Clive, how many goals are we going to concede?
I just went one fewer 25. Just keep it nice and round. I think this is going to be a thing this year. I think as we're developing ourselves in attack, I shouldn't say developing ourselves in attack. I think as we're solidifying ourselves in attack and fullback areas, and if we do add Marino, we literally add another forward because Kai Havertz will not play in midfield if we add Marino. And so that means he's a forward for the entire time. So I think defensively, we're going to be in good shape from day one. So I'm saying 25, and I was close to saying 20. I was going to go bigger, but I just go 25, just keep it nice and sort of roundish.
Yep. I mean, that puts us on a plus 65 goal difference. Tim has us on a plus 63. I have us on an identical plus 62. Paul, how many goals conceded?
26.
Okay, just so we're clear, you have filled out the spreadsheet, and that's not what you had. So now I have to update it.
I know, yeah. I'm going to change it now.
Okay, just making sure. That puts us on a plus 66. That's chesty. That is robust. A plus 66 goal difference. And I think we all expect we'll be very good defensively again. From a personnel standpoint, obviously we look stronger, both with returning players and players we've signed. And I think Raya hitting the ground, hopefully running or not running. You really don't want your keeper running. Hitting the ground standing, I think would be brilliant. We're going to go to top scorer. Paul, I'll start with you. You've gone for an edge case here. Why don't you tell me this player that you picked?
I went with Saka, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Saka.
I was kidding. He doesn't know who he picked. Like, edge case. I thought I picked Saka. What did I do?
You're very convincing. You said I went for an edge case. I'm like, what the Jesus?
No,
what the? Turns out it's Bukayo Saka. Well, unless they give the penalties to somebody else, but he's got the penalties. You see.
Yeah, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to say top scorer non-penalty.
Oh, shit.
There we go.
Okay. I'm going to go with...
That was Trossard last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Bukayo Saka.
There you go. All right, good. Bukayo Saka,
because he scores a lot. Because he's one of the forwards, and he scores a lot. And I hear he's good.
I agree he's good, and he scores a lot. Clive, who do you have?
Are we having two categories then? Top scorer, then... Okay.
Just top scorer, non-penalty.
Well, why have you changed that at the last minute? That's confusing.
Because I think it's more of a reflection of who, because let's say we get
I study
5
these things for hours and hours and hours.
So let's look at it this way, right? To Tim's point about last season, right? Last season, Bukayo Saka was our top goal scorer. Okay. But if you look at non-penalty goal scoring, and I'm going to go to last
I
season and
feel
I'm going
this
to
was
look
really
at
Paul's point, to be
non-penalty.
honest.
It was Kai and Trossard at 12, and Bukayo scored 10 non-penalty goals. So, I mean, it's just the penalties, I think, are too much to overcome to make that an interesting category. So I've gone for non-penalty here. Who do you have?
Just for difference, because I probably would have picked Havertz, but I don't. Sorry, Saka, but I'm going to pick Havertz. I think Havertz is going to be the man this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go with Kai Havertz as well as our top non-penalty goal scorer. I think, first of all, he'll play striker a lot this season, which to start last season he didn't do. If he has a first half more like his second half of last season, and then a second half like his second half of last season, he's going to get close to 20 goals. And if we're going to get 89-ish goals or something like that, I don't know that our top non-penalty goal scorer can be a 12-goal guy. I mean, it can, but I don't think so. So I'm going to go with Kai. Tim, who do you have?
I'm going to go for Bukayo Saka. I'm not interested in being different. I'm interested in being right. And I just think
I'm very attracted to you, Tim.
Saying that with chest, isn't he?
It is election season here in the U.S., and that was very much a presidential debate kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Saka just because I think he's going to play all the time, whereas I think Havertz and Jesus will rotate the centre-forward position. At the moment, I'm assuming that Trossard and Martinelli, there'll be a sense of rotation. I think Bukayo Saka is going to play pretty much every game he's fit for. And I think he didn't score as many non-penalty goals last season as maybe I thought he would. And I think he thinks that, and I think he'll want to change that.
I do think, like I had Saka's name written in, then Kai's and Saka's. I really went back and forth. I could see them being very, very close to one another, but I think Saka might kind of go nuts as a creator, as a provider this season a little bit more too, as he develops the rapport with finding Kai at the back post and things like that. So could it be a 14 goal, 12 assist or 14 goal, 10 assist kind of season for Saka? I could certainly see that. We're going to go to player of
I have Kai / Saka because I think they're going to get exactly the same goals.
No,
no.
Frankly, you can't. No, I like the idea. That gives you two of our players, so you have double the chance to be right. But I'm going to keep you. I'm going to protect you, Clive, by letting you stay with your correct pick, despite Tim's confidence in his and conviction in his player of the season. This isn't who's going to get voted for it. This is who do we think it will be. Okay. And player of the season, I'm going for Martin Odegaard. Now, this is another one where I had Saka's name written in, and I think they're both good picks. Obviously, if Kai's our top scorer, it's going to be hard to beat him. I am basing this just entirely off preseason, and Saka hasn't had much of a preseason, but Odegaard looks just insane, like completely insane in preseason already. He hasn't played a European tournament. I do think there's a chance that Saka might have to be rotated a bit more this season. We really got to be a little cautious. He has played so much football at a young age, and so maybe there will be just that effort to find him those times. Whereas Martin Odegaard seems like he's going to play 90 minutes every game, including preseason. I think he and Saka are our superstars, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's either of them, but I'll give Odegaard the nod just based on what looks like a fun preseason and the fact that he might have a little more energy in his legs having not played in the summer. Tim, who do you have as our player this season?
I'm going to say Declan Rice because I think Declan Rice is the type of player that gets better every year, and if he's better than last year, wow. So yeah, Declan Rice for me. And I think that maybe having someone like Marino coming into midfield some of the time as well could really kind of help him out a bit as well. So yeah, Declan Rice for me.
See, it's funny because if Rice continues to play 8, I could see it being Rice because he could get like 6 assists off corners and a few more goals than he did last season, plus a couple extra assists. And suddenly he's a 8-goal, 10-assist guy. And he's a destroyer, and you're going, that's a player of the season. If he plays 6, I just think it's hard for a 6 to be player of the season. I mean, other than Rodri, I think people struggle to evaluate them. But yeah, I think that's a fun shout. Clive, do you want to maybe just hedge your Kai top scorer bet with a Saka player of the season bet, and then you're covered on all bases?
No, actually, Tim's point about Rice is a really interesting one. I actually think some of the dialogue around Rice is pretty poor actually out there, based on a couple of broken England performances, shall we say. And I really think he's going to fire back. But I actually think I agree with you, Elliot. I think Odegaard's going to be the one, and the reason why is also when I was growing up, when we were all growing up, watching Barcelona, and every Barcelona team had Messi in it, right? And he just played. And I think Odegaard is taking that sort of mantle on, where he just plays, And every time you think we should sit, he just plays, and he's just leading the team in all facets. And if we are going to win something, I think the light will then turn onto the guy that's led us, and he'll be the player of the season. So that's just my thoughts.
I think those are great thoughts because they mirror mine. So obviously I think they're fantastic. We're now going to do breakout player. And breakout player.
Hang on.
Oh, didn't I get yours? Oh, no, I didn't. No. I apologize, Paul. See, this is the problem. Because you filled in the spreadsheet already, then it leads me to believe that I've already read off.
I can see Paul's now.
Yeah, that's the problem. All right, Paul, who do you got?
If anybody's interested, I could tell you who I picked.
I guess. They could just read it.
Odegaard. And I'll tell you why. He's got the pitch is now his canvas. He's without the ball. There won't be a game where he isn't basically the best player on the pitch. He may not get man of the match, but he'll be the guy who maybe should have got every second game. The pitch is his canvas. He's all over the place. He's dropping in if he needs to drop in. Off the ball, the work. Like Saka doesn't get to do that every game. So,
yeah, I think those are all good reasons. We're going to do breakout player now. And breakout player, just to clarify, this is someone who, based on the way they play this season, they go to a different level in terms of how they're thought about or their reputation in the game, their stature within the team, right? So it doesn't have to be some unknown player. It just has to be someone who goes from being, maybe a squad player to nailed on starter, or, a player that was on the fringes of the team to being more of a star for the team. Someone who elevates their stature within the group through their performances this season. It's a bit of a tricky one. Paul has picked what I think is an interesting option because he's gone for
the guy doesn't play for the club.
Doesn't play for Arsenal. So why don't you let us know who your breakout player is, Paul?
I think Mikel Merino is going to shock people at Real Sociedad this year as their breakout player.
He's going to have a fantastic season in La Liga, but
yeah,
who's going to be the breakout player for Arsenal?
Transfer over the line, he will have to be for them. Look, I think he's going to come to the league. I think he's going to shock supporters who don't think he's going to be a starter. He's going to be a starter more than they think. There's a lot of dependencies here, like signing him. I think he's certainly going to shock the Premier League, who have totally panned this move. Remember him as the guy who didn't make it at Newcastle. Wrong facts, look it up. And he's going to be a force of nature, kind of subtly, but he's going to come from nowhere to be somebody and going to be this oak in the middle of our midfield that makes our seventh 6'4" player on the pitch. So he might actually be
breakout player Mikel Merino. Look for him. I don't know what subscription you need to watch La Liga games this season, but sign up and you'll be able to see him break out. Clive, who's your breakout player this season?
I'm Merino, actually. There is a comp out there with Newcastle days, I saw today. It's a 5-minute. I may retweet it if I haven't already. He does look very good. I'm trying to think what happened.
I have to tell you how many different tracksuit tops was he wearing in this Newcastle compilation?
Listen, Newcastle fans really liked him and wanted him to stay. What I didn't realize, because I sort of saw it as well when he was younger, is at Newcastle and he didn't make it, had to go back to La Liga.
You were the kind of guy I was talking about.
Okay,
the fans.
Enough. Now's not the time for banter. I'm doing real analysis. The thing that interested me, you look at it and you say, oh, he came to Newcastle, young, nearing his prime, didn't make it, had to go back to La Liga. Not what happened. He had a release clause policy that if a Basque club came in for him, they had to sell him to that club. So he actually was liked at Newcastle and they wanted to keep him. But then Sociedad came in for him and they had to sell him per the clause in his contract. So an interesting one that maybe makes you rethink his exit from the Premier League and return to La Liga in terms of his stature there. So something to consider as we realize these players want to stay in this region. Obviously, Zubamendi and Liverpool proves these are tricky players to prize free from these clubs. But enough about Real Sociedad's players. Which Arsenal player will be breakout this season, Clive?
I'm going Kai Havertz. I think he will completely turn around people who haven't been turned around. That doesn't include the people in this virtual room, because we know what we're looking at with him, right?
Mhm.
So, and I just think he's going to go again. I see a determination there. I see a relationship with Odegaard. I think they're gonna lead this team to glory.
Okay. I love it. I mean, if you're picking Kai to be breakout player, he has to really do something special, because I think he's quite highly regarded, but I think he could. And if he's our top scorer, that would certainly qualify, I think.
Can I counter that? I don't think he's highly regarded. And
Interesting.
every single pundit's out there saying we need another striker to score goals. They don't look at our forwards and say, hold them in the same sort of high echelons as Liverpool, for example. Or they look at our forwards and say, well, Arsenal need to do something, right? So I think we need to do something maybe in wide areas, but I don't think they respect our central area, our scorers. I don't think they respect our collective way of scoring. So I think our perception attacking wise is pretty poor out there in the league. Then you look at the stats and you see 91 goals, you think, where does that come from? You know, so we've still got a way to go regarding our attacking perception and aura.
There you go. Tim, who is your breakout player?
I'm going to say this hoping you take Gabriel Jesus, but or someone does. I'm going to say Zinchenko because I think we're going to get to a better place with Zinchenko. So the thing we learned about him in his first season, he's not a 90-minute player. Fair enough. I think maybe the thing we learned about him last season, he's not a 50-game player. But I think we're probably coming to a place where we're learning about him and how to use him wisely, particularly now we've got so many other options at left back. So I'm not saying that Zinchenko is going to come into the team, play every single week and be player of the season, but I think we're going to find a much better way to use him against those lower blocks at home, etc. Perhaps bring him on as an impact sub when we need a goal. For example, he did that at Luton last season, and it really, really worked quite nicely, where we unblocked the pitch a bit. So I think we're going to find a better way with Alex Zinchenko. I also get the sense from him he's very determined to really I think he understands what's happened, and we'll see that.
He's going to start the season at left back. The shirt is his to start the season. And he has a chance right off the bat, I think, to win back people that have kind of left that bandwagon. But I agree with you in this respect, Tim. I think he just needs to play the way he usually does, minus some of the boneheaded stuff that had crept into his game last season, to significantly change the perception of him. And, I think that's certainly possible. Plenty of competition for that position, though. So I will go with Gabriel Jesus as breakout player. Never afraid to be wrong multiple times. I picked Gabriel Jesus for a lot of good stuff last season. None of it happened. So let's go back to that well. If you touch the hot stove and it burns, you should touch it again just to make sure it's still on. I think it can be a breakout player because, frankly, he looks fantastic in preseason. He's coming into the season fit and healthy. They have two things they say with a knee injury, two critical moments. There's return to play and return to performance. And return to play happens a lot quicker than return to performance. In football, people's opinions are based on the last game they watched. That's who you are. You are whatever you did in the last game that people watched. And so Jesus returned to play, but didn't return to performance. And as a result, I think people have really over-updated their opinion of who he is. He is still in his prime. He is still a player who helped City to many league titles with a key role, and a player who changed our worlds when he arrived. Do I think he will hit the heights of 2 autumns ago? I don't know that he'll hit that, but I think he will return to being a very important player for us at all 3 positions across the front 3 and go back to being regarded as one of the great players in our team, as opposed to an underperformer, which is a really good segue into underperformer of the season. Now, I want to be clear. You can't pick Ramsdale or something like that. You got to pick someone who's actually expected to do something, okay? So let's just be clear about that. And Paul, I will let you have the layup. You've gone for arguably the only one that you could pick without anybody yelling at you, but I will let you tell people who that is.
Yeah, well, I'm Mr. Negative about our team, and I'm going with Fabio Vieira. I don't know if you tried to claim credit for this, but I think I was the first one to put the boot in on him after he arrived.
Good for you.
I've never really seen it with him. And like, he's small, and that's not enough of a reason. Other players are small and still go around the place bumping people off the ball and being physical enough. I think he will somehow. Well, he doesn't need to underperform. He just needs to be, what do we call it? The underperform. Oh, he doesn't need to underperform. Okay, he doesn't need to underperform expectation. Just underperform. And he's the backup to Saka based on preseason. I don't think even in preseason with acres of space and kids to play against, he did what was required. I think he's going to suck. I'm getting in the spirit of the question.
Okay. I just real quick before I get yours, Tim, I'm going to update my breakout player to Fabio Vieira. Tim, who's your underperformer this season?
Yeah, obviously this is relative. I'm going to say Trossard, and I don't mean that I think he'll have a bad season. I think he probably hit a bit of a purple patch. I know he was like quite a way above XG, and he usually is, as good finishers are, but he was above more than he usually is. And I just wonder if some of that will level out. And I do wonder whether if Martinelli can stay fit, maybe he'll fade into the background. Because we kind of forget as well that Trossard basically wasn't really much of a fixture in the first half of the season. It was literally when Martinelli got injured and Havertz went up front that we started to see the best from him. And I just wonder, Trossard without Havertz up front, I'm not sure that's quite the same player. So, yeah, not saying bad season, but I think we'll get a bit of a call off from Trossard, but it will be compensated by a dial up from Martinelli.
Interesting. Okay, Clive, who, and by the way, it is Leo's age 30 season he's going into too. So maybe just a gentle, subtle age cliff where he can no longer run or kick the ball at all is to be expected. He turns 30 in December, so look for that to happen sometime in December. Okay, Clive.
You lot. I sometimes think, if I think of our Arsenal watching lives about Trossard in the last 2 years, I just don't know where we'd be. Honestly, I don't know where we'd
Nowhere
be.
good.
Nowhere good. But yeah, points are all valid. I'm going to pick, I sort of get Paul's pick, and I probably would have picked that. So for, I'm going to pick Vieira, but I was going to pick Eddie. But I don't know if he's going to be here.
You don't think he's going to play well for Crystal Palace?
Well, are they coming in for him? Have I missed something?
I don't think anyone's coming in for him.
Because Bournemouth has just signed Evan Nilsson and about to. So I know there's meant to be a lot of interest, but if he stays, I think he's going to have a poor time at the club. So Eddie's my pick, really. If he doesn't stay, I'm with Paul. So can I have another slash? Eddie / Vieira, shall we say? If he goes, then there's no competition, is there?
I'll let you have Eddie / Vieira, because why not? I mean, I do agree with you. Look, if Eddie stays, I don't think he plays. And, that's sort of a shame, but that's it. So here's the thing. I like to make picks in these categories that aren't the same as everyone because it gives us some coverage. If I really think about what underperformer the season is meant to reflect, I think it's meant to reflect a player we have high hopes for who doesn't meet them. I don't think Vieira qualifies in this category. Hence, I have docked Paul. He gets 2 demerits here. Clive gets 4 demerits because he's picked 2 players we have no expectations for. I will go with the yin to Tim's yang and go with Martinelli. Now, I want to be clear. I don't know if I even believe this, which is a really important part of saying things on the internet. But if I do the math, I think the expectation is we're going to see a return to glory for Martinelli where he becomes back to looking like the star winger we believe he's meant to be. And I think that is in the range of outcomes. But I think also in the range of outcomes is it doesn't happen for him right away. And the combination of Trossard and Jesus start getting more starts there, and he finds himself in a 3-way battle for that position. It is also possible we add another forward in the window, and that forward becomes competition for places. And if there's a fit Jesus, and if Leo looks good, and we all saw it, by the way, against Bayer Leverkusen, that Kai Jesus Trossard rotational flow thing that was going on was really mesmerizing. And Mikel might find that interesting enough to have 3 false nines out there like he talked about after that game. So while I do think Martinelli has in his range of outcomes a return to a glorious season, a 21-year-old who had 15 goals in the Premier League, that doesn't happen every day. I think a world where the competition for that place is fierce and other players are playing well, and he isn't able to quite claim it for his own where he's playing enough to really make the impact. Tim, I'll just let you volley back on this. I'm creating the argument for why it could be him without necessarily thinking that is exactly what will happen. But is the argument, at least, does it have merit, or am I out of my mind?
No, it certainly has merit. All of those things are in play. And I feel like Trossard and Martinelli are both two really important players, and they kind of can't both excel, can they? They can job share effectively, or one can really excel and the other one sits there watching them on the bench. Unless, of course, the unthinkable happens and Saka gets injured and one of them gets drafted over to the right-hand side. I don't really want to think about that universe in this podcast, quite frankly. So really, like that seems to me like more of a fight for a position, maybe akin to Martinelli and Smith Rowe a couple of seasons ago. And look what happened to the guy that lost that fight. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, let's get to Champions League real quick. We'll take a break from players, and we're going to go back to a big run of player stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yep. We got everyone. Good. Champions League finish. Clive, where do you have us finishing the Champions League? Oh, we got him on mute. We got our first.
Sorry,
you're
guys.
Good, you're good. Where do you have us finish?
I think I said finalists, but I sort of
finalist. Okay.
Yeah, I said finalist.
Beaten finalist,
but there's no chest involved. There's no chest involved there.
No chest.
So you know what? I'm going to probably bring that back to say semi-finalists. So,
okay, semi. You're going to have a semi there. And I think, look, the thing that's hard with the Champions League is like any knockout competition, some of it is draw related. A lot of it is draw related. If we had been on the other side of the draw in this past season's Champions League, I dare to dream where we might have wound up, but we were with Bayern and City and Madrid on that side, bit of a different look there. Paul, where do you have us?
Semi-final, I see a steady progression season after season, which for no other reason than to keep Mikel Arteta with us for as long as possible till we win the Champions League. So semi-final this time around.
Well said, Paul. Tim, where do you have us?
I'm going to say quarterfinal just because of the new format. Might mean that, you know, there's extra games, there's an extra round. I'm going to say, I think it would be quarterfinal or semi-final. I'm just going to say quarterfinal because I've been pretty giddy on this pod so far. So, you know, I need to bring things down a tad, don't I?
Giddy so it's interesting that you say that. I have quarterfinal as well. And I kind of similar to Clive, I don't have huge confidence in it, but I think this is where I'm willing to throw the gauntlet down to Mikel Arteta and say, prove me wrong. Mikel Arteta has basically been incredible, right? Like, I think it's, I know there are some people that take issue with him, but I think at this point it's pretty hard. We just had our record wins, our record goals, our record goal difference, our second most points ever in the league after, you know, being close to that the season before. He's got us playing great football. I mean, it's hard to take issue, but if you were going to take issue, I do think his knockout competition record, other than having already won an FA Cup, is spotty, and his European knockout competition record is particularly spotty. Some bad exits in the Europa League. And I think last season, the way we played against Porto was not great. And I think we looked a little meek against Bayern even. We should have had them beat in the first leg, but then the way we looked when we went to Bayern, I don't think was very good. I think where I'm at with this is, I think we have the talent to beat probably anyone but City or Real Madrid in the Champions League. And if we face those teams, I'd give us a chance. I just think they'd be favorites in that. Like, I think we should be favorites against anyone we draw in the Champions League in the world, period, except City and Madrid. Those are the only teams I think would be favored over
with
us.
Third favorites with the bookies.
There you go.
Apparently.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I assume those two were the first two favorites.
Yes.
So there you go. Madrid and City first two favorites were third favorites in the Champions League. So we should, if we don't win it, only lose to them if bookies are all that matter. I would love to see Mikel prove that we can go into these ties and really be the better team in these ties and win them. So I have quarterfinal, but I believe other than City or Madrid, no one should beat us. I just want to be I want to be proven wrong about some concerns I have in the European knockout stuff with this team so far. Clive?
If you to think back to just this season, the week where our lives changed was the Bayern week. It's managing those weeks that we're building this squad for. You know, I think we don't know what we're going to get. City got Luton between Madrid. And I think these little draws around the league games, around those critical knockout times, are really, really important. You know, really, really important. I do a lot of hill walking, as you know, right? And I normally do the same route. And when you know the route and you're coming up to a hill, you just fly up that hill. When you go to a different route, a different course, that hill's hard until you get used to it. I think we know the course, and I think it will feel easier this year. We've never done a Champions League and then play the fourth best team in the country in between the quarterfinal, you know? And I think knowing the course, feeling the pain, understanding how to go into it, the comfort levels, the assurance levels, I think that is what this season's all about. And I'll be honest with you, I'd forgotten what it's like in the Champions League quarterfinals and then playing a big game in between and managing it. I just can't remember it. I can't remember how we dealt with it. I can't remember it. These players have now gone through it once, and I think they'll be much better for it.
Paul, quickly.
The 3-game stretch that Clive talked about, we saw that I think that Arteta looked back at the City game the season before and learned from it and recruited in the summer for it, Declan Rice, etc. He looked at that and said, I need fucking Mikel Merino. A lot of people will say, we need an attacker. We don't need him. For that game, for that stretch, for that point in the season, impacting 2 competitions, that's why he wants Mikel Merino, so that he comes out of that week stronger. So,
yeah. I think that's totally plausible. And I also think it's plausible if someone's yelling, no, we need an attacker. I understand both perspectives. Could we use one more killer? I think we looked a little out of ideas against Bayern at times. And Saka can't be the guy who has to be the killer all the time. If Martinelli comes back to what we think he can be, then I think we've got something. It's not that I don't think Kai is good or Jesus is good. Obviously, I've said on this very pod that they are. But that one more player who can do something to disrupt a defensive structure that you can't game plan for. I think that's something that we need to add. Okay, now we're going to get into some individual stuff. Starts, goals, assists. There will be an Ethan Nwaneri question as well. So don't worry, we're going to do all that. We'll whip through that stuff. But first, if you are going to try to watch Match of the Day, but you don't live in England, or if you're going to try to watch all the football, but you don't live somewhere where it's all on, may I suggest you get around geo-blocking with NordVPN? May I suggest that you sign up for streaming services outside of the country to save money or watch series before they're available in your country? You can do all of that with NordVPN. NordVPN has apps for iOS and Android and computers. If you still use one of those things, NordVPN also rates really highly for their speed and for their privacy. They also have threat protection. They just really, really do a great job of making it easy, and they've given us a really good offer for you. Okay. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal. This is an ArsenalVision only. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. 4 months plus a Nord discount. Completely risk-free with 30-day money-back guarantee. It's NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Again, NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. And this podcast is sponsored by Timeline Nutrition, which makes MitoPure. And MitoPure is urolithin A, and all of those are a lot of words, but what do those words mean? It means we're talking about muscle and health strength, health span, longevity, recovery from workouts. It is the compound that is found in things like pomegranate seeds, right? And you can look that up. That's been studied quite a bit, but what it targets is the mitochondria, the cell's powerhouse. It's where power generation, energy, and stuff comes from at the cellular level. And urolithin A targets improvement in mitochondrial health. So that's for, like I said, longevity and muscle health and exercise recovery and things like that. MitoPure comes in 2 forms. You can get it in a soft gel, or you can get it in a berry powder, which you can mix into things like breakfast yogurt or a daily smoothie. Timeline is offering 10% off your first order of MitoPure if you go to timeline.com/ArsenalVision. That's 10% off. Go to timeline.com/ArsenalVision. That's timeline.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Clive. Is enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Back to the spreadsheet minds, everybody. Here we go. Who makes the most left back starts in the Premier League and how many? Paul.
When the moon hits the sky like a bigger pizza pie, Calafiori.
And how many?
19.
Okay. Tim, who makes the most left back starts in the Premier League and how many?
Calafiori, 20.
20. Okay. I have to type that in, don't I? Cala 20. Cala 20. Who ordered the Cala 20? Okay. Clive. Who and how?
I'm being swung by the crowd here, because if you'd have asked me this question 2 weeks ago while in LA watching our preseason games, I'd have said Jurien Timber straight away. I thought he's so impressive, and I didn't care where he played, as long as he played on the pitch. One little injury later, and his name's not been mentioned on this podcast. And I think we just forget people so quickly. And I don't believe that his left back days are over. He's just a flexible fullback. But I also saw Calafiori at the weekend, and Tim was there, and we were shocked by him, weren't we, Tim? His presence on the pitch. So I think I go Calafiori, and the number's like 20. Didn't bother me. He's not
20.
going to be held back.
All right, I'm going to go with Calafiori, and I'll say 24. Timber starts in the Premier League. Over, under 14.5, Clive.
Over.
Okay.
Yep.
Tim?
I'm going to say under, just.
Paul?
Under. Don't know where he's going to play.
Well,
Great
this
as
is
he
the interesting thing. I'm going to say probably under, although I think he'll play a lot. I think he'll come on a lot. Clive has reminded me we're allowed to bring players on. They don't have to start.
Well, I was going to say that question around starts. Is how important is that? We can change half the team.
You're just complaining about the format. We're not taking customer complaints at this time. So give me the customer service number. No, well, here's a question, Clive, because I'm going under.
Appearances. I just don't know how.
He could make 50 appearances in the Premier League. No, he can't. Listen, I think what makes the Timber thing interesting is it wouldn't surprise me if Timber starts fewer than 5 times this season at left back, but started 10 times at right back and 3 times at right center back. You know what? I don't think we can play Saliba every single game, and I don't think we can play Ben White every single game. And while we have 4 good choices at left back, we have 1 good choice at right back and 1 good choice at right center back, unless you start to see Timber as an option there. So I think he could get over that 14.5, but surprisingly, I think very few of those could be at left back. Clive, isn't that a fair assessment?
Yeah, but I just have to answer the question. So did I say over his appearances? I said over.
You said
40?
over. You did.
Yeah. So I'm staying with it. Yeah. So
okay. Moving on then. Martinelli starts in the Premier League 24.5. Now, just to be clear, before people say, well, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Well, Gabriel Martinelli started 24 games last season in the Premier League. People may not realize that. He made 35 appearances, because I know Clive cares about that number. So, Paul, Martinelli, 24.5.
Under. I think Jesus stays fit. Havertz plays a lot of striker, so we need Jesus minutes on the side that maybe we didn't see last season. And I think we bring in Mikel Merino so that Havertz isn't playing a huge amount of left 8. So under.
Okay. Tim?
I'm going to say over, because I kind of said that I thought Trossard might be the player at this point. I think, to your point, I think he'll be around that number. And to your point, yes, he started a lot more games, and he didn't end the season in the team, but that was literally just the end of the season. I fully expect him to play an awful lot of football from the beginning. And maybe it will just be like a substitution thing. Maybe he won't play 90 minutes all the time, but yeah, I think he'll be in about the 25 range.
Yeah, I'm going to go under, and I don't love it. I mean, I've gone with Martinelli as underperformer of the season, and I don't know that I believe it, but I think the path to that is he plays less than he'd like to because there's competition there now. More competition, and maybe even more comes in. So I'll say under, but I think he plays a lot regardless. And maybe he's more of a Champions League player. I remember once upon a time, Pep said Theo Walcott was the scariest player that Arsenal had when he was at Barcelona. I think a very rapid player in the Champions League is a good thing to have because you don't get as many teams that just sit back and defend, and there's more space to attack. And they call the game tighter, so you can't just sort of body people off the ball. Clive, what do you have? 24.5 for Martinelli.
I think he could start less games, but maybe have more appearances. I
There you
think there's more games.
Hard to have more than 35 Premier League appearances, to be fair.
Yeah, in a general season thing. I think. What would you do if you had him? Because I agree with Paul's line about Jesus. I think Jesus could be our best left-sided player quite easily. And so what would you do if you had him? You'd use him as an impact, wouldn't you? You'd use that speed in games. You would. So I think he could improve on his appearances over the season, but maybe has slightly less starts and go slightly under.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of what I think about who plays how much depends on whether we do get Marino or not, because getting Marino probably means less Kai in midfield, which means less Jesus at center forward, which means less Martinelli at left wing, if you follow the logic there. We're going to go Calafiori starts in the Premier League. We've all already picked this, so I'm just going to transpose this because we all picked him to start the most games at left back. So Paul picked 19. Which would be under the 20.5 that I had. Tim picked 20, which would be under. And I picked 24 Calafiori starts. So I'm going to go over. I'm really high on his talent. It's just how quick can he get up to speed. Let's get to one we haven't picked yet. Jesus starts.
Can I just say I'm over on that because we gave starts at left back before. I think starts in the Premier League is going to be over.
Interesting. Tim and Clive, do you want to come back on that? That's actually a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned it. I think Calafiori will play some games at left center back this season. I think it's possible. Now, I think I could see it more maybe off the bench or something like that to get Gabriel some minutes off, but Paul has produced some really intelligent thinking there. I'm not trying to sound surprised when I say
Marino point for the last one,
yes.
Why Jesus would play off the wing and how...
You're the star of the podcast, Paul. Everyone knows that. Tim or Clive, do you want to rethink your Calafiori starts in the Premier League based on him starting at center back at all?
Well, it's interesting that you went... Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Go for it, Tim.
I was just going to say, I reckon maybe like 3 or 4 starts at left centre back. I think he'll finish games there as well. Like to your point, like, you know, maybe he'll slide across and Zinchenko will come on for Gabriel or something. But yeah, I'd add in another 3 at centre back.
Puts you over. What about you, What about you, Calafiori? Clive, you've just grown some beautiful hair.
Yeah.
What about you, Clive?
Clive Fiore.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we see him in one game, right? And he played in 2 positions in that one game. So the question around left backs already cheesed me off. But yeah, he's going to play on the left side of our defence in some way or form. He's in the back 5 to finish a game, in a back 3 to start a game. You can see Gabriel potentially playing left back on occasions, particularly in the system. And Calafiori jump in the midfield from the centre-back position. You still got your back 4, just his position on the team sheet may be slightly different, right? So it's all on the table, Elliot, but I do think he's a definite over for me.
Yep. Okay, Jesus starts in the Premier League, 21.5. 21.5. And I will tell you that last season, Gabriel Jesus started 17 games in the Premier League, but we know there were fitness issues. So I've gone with a higher number here as the line, and that is 21.5. Tim, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you do this deliberately in that you pick around about what sounds like the right number, because I think it's going to be in that ballpark, in that 21. I'm gonna say below, but I'm talking like 21, 20. Sort of thing. I think he's another player who I think maybe in the Champions League, proportionately, he'll see more Champions League minutes than Premier League minutes, and they'll manage him a bit.
Good point. He is a phenomenal Champions League player by record in terms of his goal scoring there. Clive, over under 21.5 starts for Jesus in the Premier League.
Yeah, slightly under. There was a moment at the weekend when he went down with an injury and the collective hearts just stopped, right? And he carried on, but it just reminded me of the fragility of that leg and that knee. So it's just touch wood time, isn't it, with him? So see how it goes.
Yeah. I'm going to say between right wing, left wing, and center forward, he'll go over. I think it's going to be real close too, though, 22, 23 starts, something like that. But, you start to think about he gets 6 or 7 starts as a center forward. He gets 4 or 5 starts for Saka on the right over the course of the season. Then he gets 10 or 12 over on the left, and all of a sudden he's there. Actually, if you add all that up, he isn't there, but take my word for it. It'll happen some way or another. Paul, you went under? Under,
yep.
Okay. This is an interesting one because it might be neither of these players, but I think it's a fun question. This is one I was excited about. More starts in the Premier League, Clive. Thomas Partey or Jorginho?
Ooh, it's a tough one. Just pure guess, right? A pure guess on the team sheet last Sunday, and Thomas Partey. I think.
Okay.
I just think he's in improving shape, shall we say?
He looked better against Lyon than I think he's looked in a long, long time. I'll give you that.
He's just trying to manage preseason, and for somebody who's done many preseason, the older guys just cruise through it. They know the importance of not getting injured. That's the key thing. And they cruise through it and they build. They build and they build. And I think it's been building. And let's see how he goes. But hey, look, since he's had his operation, that leg has not failed him yet. I'm not saying that he hasn't looked like he's had rigor mortis, but since they've opted on him, he's been back and he stayed back. So let's see how he goes.
Paul?
Partey, I don't think there'll be a lot of appearances potentially for either one of them if Mourinho comes in. And Partey getting the nod earlier in the season, he might rack up 2, 3, 4 appearances, which might be enough to tilt it against Jorginho.
I think Jorginho will start on Saturday. I still think there's a chance Partey goes. And I do think if we get Mourinho, and if he plays a lot, and I don't know, Mourinho might be more of a squad player, but if he plays a lot, Declan Rice isn't going to go to the bench, so he's going to become a 6. I think the combination of Declan Rice playing more 6 means both of these players will be more role players than certainly Jorginho was last season. But I think the combination of Rice playing more 6, Partey maybe even potentially going, the good money for me is on Jorginho playing, starting more Premier League games than Partey this season. I don't know if I have a great feeling about that, but that's just where I'm leaning. Tim, what do you got?
I think if it was down to Arteta, i.e. there were no fitness issues, I think it probably would come out Thomas Partey. I do wonder as well, he's in the last year of his contract. Is it in the NFL they refer to the contract year?
Yep.
where suddenly players who are quite injury prone aren't injury prone anymore.
And they play out of their mind to get that next contract. Yeah.
I'm not suggesting for his next Arsenal contract, but his next contract somewhere. So I'll say reluctantly, I'll say Partey, but obviously I'm with you, Elliot. I don't think I think they'll both not start that much.
They both need to be managed, don't they? They need to be managed better than they were last year. Because we ran Jorginho off till he was dead, and we ran Partey off towards the end of the season until he died on the last game. We need to manage them much better if we're going to play them.
Yeah, a lot of it really depends on. I mean, not to keep bringing up Mourinho. Like Mourinho could come into the team, by the way, and just be seen as a squad player.
He might not even sign.
I mean, that's true.
Have I missed something? He might not even sign.
I don't know if you have missed something, but you should have listened to the intro when I said, this is the Real Sociedad Vision Podcast. Okay. Ethan Nwaneri, Premier League appearances, 8.5. Paul.
Under. He's going to struggle to get on the bench for a lot of games. Now, it could be a breakout season for him. Like, there's a couple of, like, he does something nobody else does on this. And an Odegaard injury, suddenly all things are possible. Or we discover he's quite good on the right wing too, as a Saka cover and an option. But appearances-wise, I'm going to go just under. But it's close.
Yeah, okay. Clive, what do you got for Nwaneri? Over or under 8.5 Premier League appearances?
Appearances, I'm going to go, that's a clever number. I'm going to go just over. I'm going to go just over. And the reasons why I say that, because I think scientifically and analytical wise, it's probably going to be slightly less. But I do think there's a little bit of bruising in the club around how we bring these players through. And I think this kid is a special one. And I don't think they're going to want to mess around here. They want to make sure that every possible moment he can spend in the first team environment, they're going to give him that opportunity. Lots of Champions League games, I recognise that. But I do think this kid has got something, so they should look after him. So that's why I think he'll get some time.
Yeah. Okay. Tim, what do you got?
I am going to say under. I think most of his appearances will be maybe last few minutes of Champions League group games. Weirdly, you do tend to see young players more in Champions League, I think. And in cup games, I think he'll be over that. Premier League, I don't see it unless there's quite a lot of injuries.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm going to say over. And this is the one where I thought about making it higher because I think it will be an easy over. I think he'll get starts in the Premier League this season. You watch Ethan Nwaneri play and he doesn't look like an academy kid who someday could be good. He just looks like an Arsenal player, at least in the preseason. Now, not that preseason is everything, but preseason has tended to have real relevance to what Mikel does. And I'll level with you. I think this player is ready to play at our level, and Mikel will find ways to get him there. Now, the downside is this says PL appearances, Premier League appearances. Obviously, if you add FA Cup, if you add League Cup, if we make a run in those, I think this gets a lot easier. But I just have such a tremendous belief in his talent and where he is already that I think he will play a lot. And I mean, it may be the games where we're winning comfortably. That might be it. But I think we're going to see a lot of him. All right, now we get in the goals and assists stuff. We'll whip through these. We're getting near the end here, everybody. Leo Trossard, goals plus assists, 13.5. As a reminder, last season he had 13. Clive, what do you got?
I'm going to say 12.
Okay, that's under. That's how numbers work. Paul?
Under.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, since I've decided he's going to be awful and horrible and shame the shirt, I think he might get minus 30. He might score 13 own goals and under.
Just for people who are like, he's one of our best finishers, you would have been right last season. He produced his 12 goals on just 7.9 expected. He only got 1 assist on 2.8 expected, so his teammates didn't help him out there. It is kind of ironic. We signed him and he went on an assist tear. Then last season, he hardly got any, but he scored a ton. I have this under, but I don't have conviction in it. I think this is close to what the number will be, but I think he might play slightly less if Jesus is playing well and if Martinelli's back to being decent at all. Just could be a more crowded situation for him. I have under, but I don't have conviction in it. Odegaard, goals plus assists. Last season, Martin Odegaard produced 18 goals and assists. I have the number this season at 20.5. Paul, what do you got?
Under.
Clive, what do you got?
Over.
Tim, what do you got?
Over.
I too have him over that number, returned to more like what he did the season before. Bukayo Saka, goals and assists. This is not non-penalty. This is all goals and assists. He hit 25 last season. He did convert 6 penalties, which is a lot. But 25 goals last season for Bukayo Saka. I put the number at 24.5 again, because I think 25 is certainly a reasonable number, especially if we get a few less penalties. Paul, what do you got for Bukayo Saka? 24.5.
Under. I think he'll miss a penalty or two, and we'll have to move that around to other players who'll miss some penalties, and we'll mostly squander the penalties. No, I think under. And I'm under on a lot of these things because I think we're underestimating. Marino comes in, Havertz plays more striker, Jesus plays more left, Rice plays more 6, and it's just going to cut down playtime for all of these guys who are supposed to. That one move does a lot of rotation, sharing, etc. And these guys are going to struggle to have the same access to goals that they had last season. Marino changes everything.
Follow him on Twitter at Marino Things. Okay, Clive, over under 24.5 goals for Saka.
You do realise if Arsenal don't sign Marino and sign Bruno Guimaraes, we have to redo this whole podcast. You do realise that?
No, we will not be doing that. We'll just delete all the sections Paul was in and replace it with. Okay, so Saka, 24.5 goals and assists.
Over.
Yeah, all right.
The man means business.
I am
mate.
also over. Tim, what about you?
Can we talk more about Mikel Merino? No.
Yeah. I mean, just wait till Paul's next section.
Over.
I love the confidence. Kai Havertz goals and assists. 22.5 is the number I set. Last season, he hit 20. He did score a penalty, so 19 non-penalty goals and assists. But remember, it was a slow start to the season. A lot of that came late, so I set the number at 22.5 goals and assists. I have him as our top scorer. So, of course, I am over 22.5. Tim, what about you?
I'm going to go slightly under.
Slightly under 22.5 goals and assists. Clive?
Over. The man
Over.
means business.
Love the confidence. And Paul, let me guess, you're under.
Under the Marino factor, and he ran pretty hot at the end of last season. Marino isn't in any of these picks. He's just having a knock-on effect. Like, I only mentioned him once.
I do want to make a point. You have picked under for every single goal and assist bar that I set, but you also have a scoring 92 goals. So it's going to be a
Spreading
huge
it around, baby.
Because Marino's going to score 40 goals. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel, Saliba, Marino, headers from corners. It's all we're going to score the whole season, and it's going to trigger everybody.
We got 7 guys who are 6'4". We're just going to spread it around a lot of rotation. I don't know if you guys have got the theme here.
Okay.
A little less time on the pitch.
Yes, I hear you. We're coming up to our top 4 predictions, by the way. 2 more sections, and we're going to hit that. Jesus goals and assists. Last season, Gabriel Jesus, largely regarded as being totally worthless, did produce 9 goals and assists in his 1,400 minutes. Not really that terrible. I set it at 14.5 this season, and you will not be surprised to hear me going back to the well and saying he goes over. I think he will play all 3 positions across the front 3 at times this season. And I think, by the way, all stats are Premier League only. So this is for Premier League. 14.5. I think this is a tough number, by the way. I could see it being 11-4. You know what I mean? 11 goals, 4 assists, 12 goals, 3 assists, like 9 goals, 5 assists. It's going to be right around there, but I do have him over 14.5. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, I think he'll play wide quite a bit, so he might bump those assist numbers a little bit. So I'm going to say over, yeah.
I love the way you're thinking. Clive, over under?
I'm going to go slightly over. Almost like so that number's well chosen again, Elliot.
Thank you.
And I think he finds it easier to score from wide. So as long as he's fit, he's going to get that number.
I love it. Paul, no question needed. Mikel Merino will hold him back from playing as much as he wants. So under?
Under. He who shall not be named will have a knock-on effect on Jesus.
To be fair to Paul, if Marino comes in and plays a lot at left 8, it means Kai is not playing left 8. He's playing center forward. And if Kai's playing center forward, it means less time for Jesus and it means less goals and assists. So we do get your point, Paul. We're just making fun of you because it's fun. Martinelli, goals and assists, 15.5. Now that number may sound high, but he did produce 10 last season. And the season before he was above that as well. So I put it at 15.5 and then immediately went under. But I don't have conviction in this. Martinelli's the Schrodinger's player for me this season, because there is a world where I see him getting back to being the player that we know is in there, and he makes the left wing position sort of his. And this is another 16 or 17 goal season for Martinelli. Like that is in the range of outcomes. The other Schrodinger's Martinelli is Trossard starts the season and plays pretty well, and Jesus plays there some, and Martinelli's there, but he's playing more in Champions League, and he's more mixed in which case I don't think he can get to this number in the Premier League. So I've gone under, but I definitely could go over, which is important to note how all of this works. So, Tim, Martinelli, 15.5 goals and assists, over under.
I'm going to say over. 10 goals, 5 assists, 6, over.
Love the confidence. Clive?
I'm not there at the moment. Got to be true to myself. I think he's got stuff to learn about his on-pitch composure and his selections in the last third. I do. It's not a quality issue. It's an application of talent issue. And just knowing when to slow and then maybe not try so hard. So I'm a little bit concerned about him actually, and the extra competition could actually take it the other way, and could make him more tense in his critical moments that we're all waiting for. So, like I say, this is just a work in progress. He's a young kid, right? But he's on his second contract, and maybe extra wages sometimes bring expectations on yourself, And so, yeah, hopefully it'll be all right, but slightly under.
Yeah, I think that last action has to go back to being more what we saw 2 seasons ago than what we saw last season and in this preseason so far. That's the part, where we're hoping it turns around. Paul, how far under are you on this one?
Just slightly. Schrodinger is Martinelli. If they stick him in a box with poison and radiation and a 50-50 chance of dying, I think that's going to impact him either way.
That's true.
Plus,
Yeah.
Mikel Merino.
If he has been around the radiation,
wing.
though, it may lead defenders to give him more room to operate. So, again, could go either way. Now we get to the fun. The last section, top 4 picks. Now, as I have noted, every single one of us has Arsenal first.
Woo-hoo.
But who do we have second, third, and fourth? That is what we are about to find out as Paul, messy Merino things on Twitter, comes to us. Where do you have Mikel Merino finishing in the top 4? Now, what's your top 4?
First with Arsenal, Manchester City, then... am I supposed to give you my 4?
Your 4? Mm-hmm. In order.
Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool. Really? Did I pick?
It looks
Tottenham.
like you did. You want... Interesting. Yeah. You have Spurs finishing 4th, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to ridicule it. I think it's totally plausible. Clive, give us a top 4.
3 we all know in the same order. Liverpool just slightly behind. I think they may have some strange moments in build-up in the first phase of the season, but I think the manager is okay and he knows what he's doing. So it'll be interesting to see them. But the 4th place team, I got a feeling if they keep all their players for Newcastle.
Okay.
I think they could refine their energies. And I don't think they're in Europe. I'm not sure. But if they are, it's very like conference. But they could refine their energies, refine their health. They get some people back. Just got a feeling for them this year.
They have a really good team. What's his name? Torin. Why can't I think of it? It's completely left me. The guy they signed last season, but the gambling.
I
Yeah,
was going to say Toletti, but Tonati.
Tonelli. Yeah.
One of a Tonati boy.
I don't know.
It's in that area.
It's in that sphere.
Tonali.
I could
Tonali.
Tonali. There we go.
That's what I said. Yeah. That's exactly what I said the first time. I think they're a very good team, and I think it's a very good shout. They are an interesting XG example because they produce a ton of it. But defensively, they were a sieve. I think Trippier might be done. I kind of wonder defensively how they'll be again this season, and maybe it's the final season from a managerial standpoint. Clive?
Yeah, they're trying to get. Is it Mark Gay trying to get him in?
Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound like it's going to happen.
Did they get Tosin Adebayo? Did they get him from Fulham last year on a free transfer? I think they did. So they got Lewis Hall's fullback. They got Livramento as fullback. I'm not saying they're going to win the World Cup or anything. I just think there's stuff
that
there.
Would be amazing.
There's stuff there. But mate, to be honest, Villa look decent as well. Very, very good. I just think they're going through the course for the first time. But we know that Emery will target Europe, right? So, so yeah.
Yep. Interesting one. I'm always happy to bet against Unai Emery, as everyone knows. Tim, give me your top 4.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've got Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, and I'm really going backwards and forwards between Newcastle and Spurs, exactly the same. But I'm gonna show some bias and say that Spurs won't do it, and it will be Newcastle. I think they had a massive injury crisis last season. They got in the Champions League a year too early, did not have the squad for it at all. I think they also got a bit unlucky with injuries, and also I think they got on a better path at the end of the season when they started to get players back, and yeah, again, following the immutable law of averages, I don't think they'll get as many injuries this season. I believe they're not in Europe. If they were, I do wonder whether they'd have gone for Aaron Ramsdale. So yeah, I'm going to go for them, whereas Spurs are going to be in the Europa League, I believe. So I think that might decide it. Villa, I think, are going to finish 7th or 8th. I think they'll totally fall away. They were really bad at the end of last season. It's just everyone else had given up. So they really crawled over the line last season. And I think they're going to have the Newcastle season this year where Champions League just completely saps them. So I'm thoroughly writing them off.
I love it. I am going to make the hilarious pick. Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Chelsea. Chelsea had really good underlyings last season. They've lost Pochettino, but I am on record saying I don't know that I think Pochettino is that great. He says as soon as the U.S. men's national team signs Pochettino to be manager, although to be fair, by international managerial standards, he's absolutely exceptional. That's a different class of management. I think, look, Maresca is the unknown here, but from a talent standpoint, I just think there's a lot there. I mean, I really do. I think Nico Jackson's probably a good player. I think that Pedro Neto, if he could stay fit, LOL, is a very good player. And Nkunku is a good player. They have some players, some wide players that are a little bit of question marks. Caicedo started to look really good towards the tail end of last season. Romeo Lavia is back. I don't know what Enzo will do. We'll see. Defensively, they have issues. There's no question in my mind. But I think all the teams chasing fourth are flawed. And I think they just have, first of all, they have every player. Having every player is a huge advantage. They have them all, literally. It could be a disadvantage. It could mean that there's disharmony. But I think from a talent standpoint, there's enough there for them to get to top 4, and their underlyings last season were trending in that direction. I think given a group of flawed teams, they might be the one that can sneak in there. Let's put it this way. Whoever it is finishing 4th, they're going to be 25, 30 points adrift of the top spot. You know, no one's getting close. This isn't going to be one of those seasons where 10 points separates 1st and 4th. I've thrown in one more wild card section before we end. Manchester United's Premier League finish. None of us have them in the top 4. And I'm sort of fascinated by one more season of Erik Ten Hag being at the helm, Ten Hag at the wheel. Fascinated by their moves or lack thereof and what they're trying to do. Euro injured, Højlund injured, Xerxes in, is Sancho staying? It's all very much up in the air. Casemiro is back, ready to do some big-time Casemiro stuff. So I'll ask you, Clive, where are Manchester United finishing?
I'm going to say 5th. And I actually said, I got asked it on the overlap, and I said 4th. I just blurted it out without thinking. Because they are FC Hollywood, right? They're happy under the light. They're happy in moments. And I know it's only Community Shield and Man City were just still taking their flip-flops off, but they played well in that game. You know, they did some good moments, and they are starting to buy people who could get better. You know, you look at the teams and you think, who could get better in that group? So I'm going to say 5th, and I think they're going to be an interesting club to watch this year. And I mean club, top to bottom. I think organisationally they've got so many people there. Succession plans already in place for Ruud van Nistelrooy. He's an impressive guy. I did see a press conference with him a couple of years ago in the Europa League, and I was really impressed with him. And I thought, wow, you're going somewhere in the game. This way he carries himself. So, yeah, one to watch as a club. I think we're going to talk about him quite a lot, Elliot, this year.
Yeah. I obviously disagree with that, but I will give you my position on them momentarily. Tim, where are United going to finish?
I'm going to say 6th. I'm going to say that on the assumption that Ten Hag doesn't survive the season. Obviously they've done a lot of off-field stuff. So like they've got a whole new like boardroom, basically.
That'll fix them.
Yeah, which you know they've needed to do something in that area for quite a while. Whether this actually works, I don't know, but I think they have got some interesting people there. I think the other interesting thing they've done, I know they're largely Dutch, so there might have been Ten Hag's choices, but they've appointed 2 coaches who have like head coach experience, And that suggests a lack of faith in the actual head coach. That feels very, we don't think you're very good, so let's just put 2 other guys around you. And it also feels a bit contingency planning-y to me. It feels a bit, when you get the tin tack in December, we can just put Van Nistelrooy in charge and we don't have to go through the whole Ralph Rangnick thing or Ryan Giggs thing, or all the other silly interims we've had over the last few years. So I'm going to say, to your point, they don't have like a reliable goal scorer. They're still blundering around with Casemiro, and De Ligt. Maybe that is good signing for them because they're weak at centre half. But I think they've done some interesting stuff. We should also acknowledge they had a horrific injury record last year, and I don't think they'd have been loads better, but they would have been better with like Lisandro Martinez fit. And maybe even Luke Shaw. So I'm going to say 6 on the basis of the talent that they have, staying a bit fitter, and because I think Ten Hag will probably get sacked during the season.
Yeah, that actually, that would force me to update my thinking a little bit. Paul, where do you have them finishing?
7th, because I think everybody else, I can find teams who are less of a shit show. Newcastle, we've already talked about, not in Europe. Spurs, Ange Ball, clear. I think the stronger with Solanke, so I think they'll be better than United and Chelsea. Chelsea have a huge squad, of which Maresca can surely find 14 players that will suit his style enough to get him ahead of United. The only question is whether United are 7th or 8th, depending on how bad Villa fall away. I don't think they'll fall away so bad, but law of averages, they come out as United will come out 7th. Somebody will underperform them.
So I'll say 8th. And it's really this simple. Manchester United last season were 15th in expected goal difference and finished 8th. 15th. They dramatically overperformed their metrics last season. I think it is possible.
Haven't they done that for a little while though? Don't you don't they get more points than they should the last bunch of seasons for some weird reason? Games they shouldn't.
No, they were plus 17 unexpected goal difference 2 seasons ago and plus 15 in real goal difference. So they underperformed their underlying metrics 2 seasons ago.
Forget
what you said. Yeah. So the moral of the story here is, I just think they could play better, be a bit better, have things not quite go for them like they did last season, and finish in the same place while having played quite a bit better. This is a team that wasn't okay last season. They were terrible, among the worst in the league. And I think that if they basically improved to being more of a credible mid-table kind of performer, they could finish in the same place. And I don't think they have the goals. I really don't think they have the goals. So if you don't have the goals, as we've seen, if you don't have a killer, if you don't have the goals, it makes it a lot harder to overcome poor performances, because who's going to just win it for you out of nothing? They're recommitted to Bruno. Can he continue to play at the level he has? Because if he can't, they're dead. So yeah, I think they stink, and I think they'll continue to stink. And I think that's a good place to leave it. We all have a brilliant season ahead of Arsenal Football Club winning the Premier League, but going out roughly quarterfinal, semifinal of the Champions League, so Mikel out. No, I'm kidding. Cannot wait for the games to matter again. All happening on Saturday. You're going to get a patron Wolves preview tomorrow and an instant reaction live at full time on Saturday, and then a main pod on Monday, and on we go. So we love you. We cannot wait to share the season with you. Paul is on Twitter at Marino Things. Thanks, Paul. Tim's on Twitter at Stillman. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter at Clive PC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Ain't gonna. We love you so much. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Wolves 0.